In response to concerns from several neighborhoods, city councilors are looking at ways to provide more protection from the pressures in the market for housing. Among them is our guest, the district councilor for South Boston, the South End, and Chinatown. We'd like to welcome Ed Flynn. Thank you very much for being with us, Councilor.
It's good to be with you, Chris.
I know your colleagues are also trying to work on the housing issue, but you've called for a hearing about protections for tenants, right?
I did. I'd like to explore ways of working with landlords and tenants in the city government, but those elderly people, those on fixed income, low income, instead of displacing them after 30 or 60 days, give them an opportunity to stay much longer, especially if they're elderly. Give them 2 years or maybe give them 3 years so that they're able to find a place, they're able to save money, they're able to look around or see what other housing services are available. But I think evicting them after 30 days or 60 days when a new owner takes ownership of the residence, is something I'd like to take a look at. I received a lot of calls not only in South Boston but throughout the district in Chinatown, parts of downtown Boston, the South End. But I think long-time residents are looking for some assistance from us on ways that we could help them stay in a neighborhood, a city that they love, that they've been here their whole life. And because of the booming economy and the price of housing now, often difficult for them to stay here, especially the elderly and low income.
I know it might be a little early on, but do you think the remedy here is mainly about some kind of restrictions on rent increases, or is it just mainly about a little more breathing time and help with relocation for people?
I think they need some breathing time. I think they need an opportunity for us to work with them, work with the landlords, give them an opportunity to stay. Also, we were also seeing the federal government getting out of public housing, but we have a great BHA, Boston Housing Authority, under the great leadership of Bill McGonigal. We have a huge waiting list as well with BHA. But we want to make sure we're able to provide housing for low-income families, for the elderly. And I'm working closely with the Mayor Walsh's administration to build more housing, especially for working families, for the elderly, for our seniors, and for veterans as well.
Right. Another thing you're working on are public services for what most of us call the Seaport District, I guess. A lot of construction going on down there, good market values, but something's missing then, right?
There's something missing. We don't have a fire station down there. We need a police station. We need a public library. State Senator Nick Collins has been working on that issue for several years. He's strongly advocating for a public library, which I support. We also need a voting location down there to make sure that the residents of the Seaport, or as we call it, the South Boston waterfront, have a place to vote in their neighborhood. Right now they vote, they're part of Ward 6, Precinct 1, they vote at the Condon School. We want to establish a voting precinct or a place to vote for them down there. But they need basic city services, including public transportation down there. That's been a major concern. Getting into the waterfront, getting out of the waterfront. So that's something we continue to work on, and it is challenging.
Well, speaking of transportation, I've also seen, in addition to your Twitter feeds here, people in South Boston waiting in line to get on an MBTA bus. What about that?
It's a major problem, major concern in South Boston and in other areas of the city. I've also called for locations throughout the district where we have bus rapid transportation, express bus lanes that would expedite the opportunity, so we're not waiting in traffic for a long period of time. But those that are taking public transportation, it is challenging for them. But we need to work closely with the MBTA, work closely with our state leaders and city leaders to make sure that those that rely on public transportation have good access to public transportation. I take it not every day, but I do take the train from Broadway Station to Park Street. And my wife takes the bus, and my daughter takes the bus, public transportation, every day. But people in South Boston do rely on public transportation. It is a critical issue. And Senator Collins is making great progress working with the MBTA. And we're going to get there, but it's taking us much longer.
Well, you have more growth, and even when people don't own cars themselves, they use ride sharing, so you get more congestion in Southie, and you've got more pedestrian safety problems too, right?
Pedestrian safety has been my biggest issue I've been working on. We had a terrible loss last year of a young boy in South Boston on L Street. But I called for a reduction, along with Councilor Frank Baker, but a reduction in the speed limit from 25 to 20. And the city recently announced that they also support a reduction of the speed limit. But we also need to have other traffic calming measures as well, including more stop signs, bumping out the sidewalks, having more blinking lights, having sidewalks that are more pedestrian friendly, and other traffic calming measures as well. It's critical. I've been meeting with a lot of pedestrian safety groups. I've been meeting with cyclists. We need more bike lanes as well. But I've also been meeting with residents across the district, whether it's in Chinatown or the South End, and they also want to see us do more on pedestrian safety issues. Slow Streets, which is a City of Boston program, is an excellent program. I want to work to make sure it reaches every neighborhood across the city.
And of course, what also puzzles me here is I think a lot of this traffic that you're concerned with, it's not people who live in South Boston, it's people who drive through South Boston, isn't it?
That's right. We're getting a lot of traffic coming from the South Shore, getting off the expressway, cutting through Dorchester, coming up the beach to South Boston on L Street, at times driving very fast and then heading into downtown Boston that way. So it's very unfair to our elderly. It's very unfair to a lot of children that are walking to school. We have a lot of mothers and fathers taking their kids to school, and a lot of disabled that are using the crosswalks and walking, and these cars are speeding. So that's why I've called for a reduction of the speed limit from 25 to 20. That's one of my top priorities. I think I talk to Mayor Walsh often about that, and that's something I'm going to continue to work hard on to make sure that our streets are as safe as they possibly can for everybody, for pedestrians, for drivers, for cyclists. It's critical.
You're also looking to strengthen protection for the rights for people with disabilities. What do you have in mind?
I'm calling for a hearing, a city council hearing. I'm working with the commissioner, Kristen McCosh, and talking about what services are available for those in the disability community. I consider myself in the disability community. I'm active in the Disabled American Veterans. My parents have custody of a disabled grandson that stays with them, and I see them walking with Braden often. And as it relates to pedestrian safety and services as well, but we need to make sure that we do as much as we possibly can to make life more comfortable for those in our disability community. Make sure that they're treated with the respect and dignity that they've earned. ADA is a great piece of legislation, and we want to make sure every person in the city is able to access basic city services. Language access is also critical. I communicate, my staff and myself communicate in Cantonese and Mandarin and Spanish on social media. So it's making sure that those that oftentimes that don't have a voice in government are heard. And whether it's the disability community or our immigrant community, we're going to work hard for everybody.
Well, elsewhere in the district, at the Blackstone School in the South End, speaking of disabilities, many parents are concerned about budget cuts, including teachers for students with special needs. You were marching with those parents. What was your impression?
I marched with the parents. I marched with State Representative John Santiago. A lot of the families are from the Villa Victoria, high concentration of Puerto Rican. A lot of them were from the Cathedral, public housing as well, and a lot of students are from East Boston. But they want to make sure that the programs that are working continue. We have a lot of special needs students at the Blackstone, and the school is doing well. And let's not cut a school that's doing well, that's providing a good education, that's helping the most needy children that we have. A lot of them are non-English speaking. We want to continue those language programs, those arts programs, the math programs. Family counseling is critical, and it's a great school community. It's working well. I've talked to the superintendent and the chief of staff, and I want to make sure that that school is able to continue providing a great education for the most needy across our city.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Chris, it's good to be with you.
Boston City Councilor from District 2 at Flynn.